I want to start off like, what was your background prior to coming to the USA, and what inspired you to start your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so I have an academic background in science or engineering. So microelectronics. So I actually studied microelectronics for 7 years at Peking University, both my undergrad, my first master's program over there. Um, because I have been like passionate about high tech ever since I was a little kid. But in terms of my career aspiration or interest, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur when I was little. So back then during my first master program, I tried a little bit, tried to start my first startup. Didn't work, but I learned a lot. I also realized, being an entrepreneur was my true passion, or is my true passion. But also I realized, I didn't have enough skill set or even mindset to be a successful leader to grow a company. So that's why after I graduated, I went to work with Huawei, which is a pretty big high tech company, for 4 years over there. First 2 years as an internal consultant. The next 2 years, I was working as a sales manager, channel sales manager over there. So I worked 4 years on the business side, learned a lot. So in 2016, I felt, it was the right time for me to go back and pursue my entrepreneur dream. A lot of my friends and even family members thought I was crazy because I was quitting a pretty good job. Um, come to the US, which is a completely different world, with no resources, nothing, no background, no resources, nothing over here. Basically starting everything from scratch. Um, but I guess I was stubborn and crazy to many people's standards. Yeah, and I went to Carnegie Mellon University for MBA study. We have 4 concentrations, including entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship was my concentration, and TalkMeUp was actually my capstone project. And I've been iterating the idea many times together with other talents. Now we're a company now. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you mentioned you worked in sales and marketing and a lot of other roles.
Mm.
So did you feel like picking all of these skills early was setting you up for success for your startup later? Or is that something
Mm.
you could have learned in your MBA as well?
As Steve Jobs said, connecting the dots.
Mhm.
I think um, my MBA program actually helped me look back of my previous experience from another perspective, at a methodology level, I would say. For instance, right, at my previous job, I would do things, for instance, how to approach, how to do the pricing, for instance, right?
Mhm.
My colleagues would tell me, okay, you have to refer to the, for instance, like historical pricing point, and then consider the, cost, this kind of cost, that kind of cost, right? But they never told me, systematically, how to allocate the cost, like why we came up with this specific price.
Mhm.
But at MBA program, let's say, the courses that I took, accounting and other courses, oh, I actually got the chance to look at this small thing, which is the pricing strategy from a different perspective. For instance, you understand the supply, the comparative advantage from the econ perspective, right? And then from accounting, you know how to allocate the cost so that you price wisely, in order to run a business in a sustainable way. So a lot of things like that. I feel like I definitely benefited a lot by actually working with a large company. Even before that, I interned at a US company in China as well. Um, but then my 2 year MBA program experience actually helped me to bring my mindset to a next level, so that I can actually think uh, in a different way. I would say, yeah.
So what I'm hearing is like MBA actually provided you with the tools to a more structured and
Mm,
methodical way of solving problems.
yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
awesome. So I want to talk about the product you're building right now.
Mm.
And AI is so sought after right now. There's so many startups. So what got you excited about Talk Me Up, and how did you decide that you wanted to pursue this?
Yeah, so first of all, AI is a tool, is not a product. It's not an industry, right? It's a method that we solve a certain issue, right? So it's a tool. In terms of, the idea of Talk Me Up, actually during my first year of MBA, I had another idea, which didn't work. Then, one day I was doing some soul searching, asking myself the whole meaning of quitting my well-paid job and come over here for a full-time MBA experience. I couldn't find a straight answer. I was like, what's the whole point or the whole value of an MBA program, right? I couldn't find a straight answer to that question. So instead, I did a survey among my classmates at that time. Surprisingly, people didn't rank courses like econ or finance or accounting, those knowledge-based courses. Instead, they ranked two things. One is the network resource, which is pretty obvious. The second one is the communication training, or some people call it soft skill training, which led me um, to further dig into this market. And then I realized, it's a huge, huge market. We're talking about like um, hundreds of billion size globally. And as I dug deeper into the market, I realized the current training solutions when it comes to communication training um, are all very outdated, which means you always require human coaches, at least one human coach on the other side to provide the training. I mean, before the COVID, it's usually, in-person training or small class, group training. I mean, these days, Zoom calls, webinars, but all these different formats, they all require human coaches on the other side. And apparently, their business models are not scalable. That's why in this huge market, we haven't seen any unicorns yet
Mhm.
because their business models are not scalable. Human coaches, they're not perfect. They can't give you, objective feedback. They have their own biases and perspectives. Um, and there's no way to quantify the training results. Everything is just, I feel it's from self reports from the trainees, right? I feel like I improved, but how much, like whether that's true, you don't know. um, what's more, there's a huge disconnect between the training content and their actual business needs or actual business impact. So a lot of issues over there, but still, companies are paying tons of money to get their employees trained, because if trained, they see some results, even though they don't know how or how much. Um, so over there, I was like, perhaps, we can find a better solution, right? So I further, looked into the way the training is conducted, the training methodology, if you call it. Basically, as an MBA student, we're all mandatory to take communication courses, for instance, management presentation, for instance. The way the students are getting trained is basically very straightforward. So the professors will ask you to, um, you know, give an actual presentation in front of the class. And after that, the professor will give you feedback based on a set of metrics. They call it a rubric. The metrics are mostly around your delivery, and a very high level on the content. So for instance, how you tell a story, how you structure content, etc., etc. The coaches would assume you know what you're talking about. So they focus mostly on your delivery and the structure of the content. So I was like, perhaps we could use AI to do it, because for instance, the coaches will tell you, oh, you used filler words, but they cannot tell you how many filler words or when you used what filler words, right? So I just had the idea of, perhaps we can use AI to substitute the training. So I reached out to my old friends saying, hey, I have this idea, based on your research or your understanding of the academia. Can we actually realize it? Um, So the simple answer is yes, but of course it took us 2 years to iterate many versions. So from there, I think the next question for me is to find the market product fit or product market fit. I guess very simple way to validate that is whether your potential customers or target customers are willing to pay you.
Mhm.
So the answer to that question is yes for us. Then the remaining question would be, okay, then let's actually focus on building a product that can actually deliver our vision. Yeah, so as you can see, it's like a funnel for us. So at first it's like a general idea, and then we validate the idea. So it's a yes, and then we go deliver what we envisioned. Yeah.
Cool. And for folks who are curious about Talk Me Up, which JJ explained is a communication training product, she's going to demo it at the end of the session, and she's graciously accepted to share a code to redeem for you to get premium access to some of the interview prep features, contingent upon you filling out our feedback form, which you're going to send after the session. So yeah, stay here, don't go anywhere. So JJ, back to the question about, you talked about product market fit, right? Like if customers are willing to pay for your product, then it's a good product. So how did you determine that? Like, did you conduct interviews? Did you do demo testing or pick up like beta testers who could test the product and tell you like if they would be willing to use it or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we position our product as a B2B product.
Mm-hmm.
So at the very early stage, we interviewed a lot of industry experts because there's actually benefit when you interview experts because they see a lot of things and they can summarize what they see for you. That'll save you a lot of effort. And from them, they actually filter out a lot of noise um, for you in comparison to you talking with 100 potential users, right, and getting a lot of voice. So at our early stage, we definitely talked with a lot of industry experts, and then we pitched our idea to them in an iterative way. By that I mean, okay, let's say we're talking with this expert today. I pitched him this idea of using AI to give instant feedback and say, yes, this is a valid idea. We feel happy. And I was like, okay, if we have the general idea, are there any specific, pain points you think we should address with certain product features? So as you can see, you get more and more specific. So next time when we talk to this, the second expert, for instance, to make this, simpler, we further pitch them with the vision plus the features that we developed during the first conversation with another person, and then further validate the features of the product. So from there, we were able to very quickly and efficiently to have a vision, like really visualize what we see in terms of the solution we want to develop to address certain issues. Yeah, hope that answered your question.
Yes, it does. And you keep saying we, so I
Mm,
understand that you're working as a team. And an important part of startup is like idea is one thing, it's really important. But the other side is, do you have the right people to work on it?
mm.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and ask you, like, how did you build your initial team? Like, how large is your team right now?
The right now we have 7 full-time employees, plus about 15 interns and more we're recruiting right now. So in total, we have 25 to 30 ish team, including our interns right now. So
Wow, that's a
relatively bigger team now.
big team.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the early stage, other than myself, there was definitely a lot of turnover in terms of the core team members, because I feel like at the early stage, it's all chicken egg situation, right?
Mhm.
You have to build something to attract the talents to join you. but then again, you need talents join you to build something, right? So it's always chicken egg situation. The same thing with investors as well. Yeah. So I started, talking with my friends, my old friends, and they helped me build an MVP. From there, we talk with potential customers, potential investors, all positive feedback in general. Um, and then from there, we hired interns and then build a better version of that. And then some of the core team members couldn't join the team eventually. So I reached out to more people to say, hey, do you want to, join the team, buy in this vision, and you actually become a co-founder. So from there, little by little, I was able to attract more talents to the team till today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great product. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people would want to come and pitch in. So you touched upon the topic of investors
Mm.
and how easy was it to secure funding? And I want to bring in the immigrant side of your story here. Like as an
Mm.
immigrant, did it deter you from approaching investors? And what did your interactions look like?
It's not easy at all stages of a startup. It's not easy, right? But in my case, I would say it was definitely very hard at the beginning, because in my case, I only have 1 year OPT because the MBA program. I mean, 2 years after that, CMU MBA, they have a STEM OPT as well. But when I graduated, I only had 1 year OPT. Most of the immigrant entrepreneurs, they use H1B, which is a lottery based. That means it's risk for investors, right? So from investors' perspective, I understand their perspective, because in their case, they were like, okay, if I invest in you, um, what if 1 year later you didn't get your H1B and then you have to leave the country, right? Then the company basically wouldn't exist if that happens, right? So most of them, um, they decided to wait until I have a resolution to my visa
Mhm.
situation. I was very lucky. TalkMeUp won, a couple of competitions. McKinney's competition, the CMU venture competition, was the first one we won. From there, we won 15K. Um, and then from there, I reached out to my old boss in China. He wanted to, match whatever CMU invests in us. And then soon after I had the conversation with him, I got the chance to participate in CMU Venture Bridge accelerator program, through which CMU invested 25K more in us. So um, in the summer of 2018, we were able to secure 80K, both from CMU and my boss, who matched the CMU's investment. So we were definitely like bootstrapping, because I remember in the summer of 2018, I brought one intern to the Bay Area. She had a bedroom. I was living in a couch for 2 months just to save the cost. It was crazy. But we were able to, launch a beta product and showed our product in the demo day. And from there, we attracted a consultant who's still working with us today. Also, met a lot of people from there. So I think small iterations, that's how we attracted funding. And then when we returned from Silicon Valley in, was that September, October 2018, we won another big competition, which is a prize competition. From that competition, we won 160K cash, which is a lot. And also that's a regional competition. So our lawyers were able to apply for O1 work visa for me, which is the extraordinary talent work visa for me. I got that approved like very quickly. So after that, a lot of investors who were waiting for their visa resolution started to invest in us. Yeah. So I would just I would say the visa situation was definitely a hurdle, but it's definitely possible to overcome it by actually growing your business. Yeah.
That's great news. I'm pretty sure that's great news for a lot of attendees here. So you didn't go the traditional VC route. I mean, it was challenging and you won a lot of competitions. Could you list these competitions for me? Like which ones did you go for? And I know you mentioned a couple from CMU.
So a McGinney's competition and then Uprise competition, and another one from CMU, um, and Thai Pittsburgh, which is a Pittsburgh-based competition. We also participated in Duquesne University Venture Competition in 2020. Yeah. So I mean, at the early stage, participating in these competitions were basically for making the grant money.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main purpose. But these days, it's mostly for exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're
That
still doing it. Yeah.
did you consider like approaching or looking for government agencies for grants?
Not until last year. So
Mm-hmm.
last year we applied for NSF funding.
Mm-hmm.
We got the first round approved. So this year we're supposed to submit the final proposal.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm. Also, if you're an immigrant, I don't think you're qualified to apply for most of the government funding because they require you're either a citizen or a green card holder. So right now, I'm waiting for my green card, like the final step of my green card process right now. So that's why we can, proceed with the NSF funding. Yeah.
So if you have to give advice to immigrants who want to start up and get investment, would you suggest going the competition route is the best possible way?
It's definitely a very good way to expedite the growth of your company. Because even if you don't participate in any competitions, definitely talk with their potential customers because you want to get your ideas and product, however bad or imperfect that is, in front of other people, right? External world to get feedback. That's the only way you can iterate. Yeah.
And did all of these happen within a span of 1 year? I know you were working on it already when you were in college at CMU, but then within 1 year, you were able to secure funding. You didn't go for a job. Like, how did you get the conviction to not do this part time so that you have a safety of an H-1B, which would buy you some time, but rather just jump right in? I feel that's very,
Mm.
very impressive.
I at that time, that seems like my only way out. Yeah, that's true because I knew I only had 1 year
Mhm.
to achieve certain milestone. Um, because I mean, people say if you fail, fail fast, right? Um, no matter you are a U.S. citizen or an immigrant, if you are growing a startup, you want to grow it fast or fail fast. So I think at that time, I guess I put most of my energy, um, focused on my startup. That's why I didn't spend much time looking for a job. And I remember I was sitting in an interview with a very big company. They were like, "Oh, what's your career plan? Like in 5 years?" I said, "I want to be an entrepreneur." I just couldn't lie. And then I was like telling them, um, how I had vision of my life, of my career, and I was so passionate. I feel like the interviewer could feel my true passion about entrepreneurship, and naturally I didn't pass the interview, but I feel like I remember after the interview, as I walked out of the room, I was like, damn, I just have to do my startup. So I stopped interviewing. Yeah.
So you
So
were like very laser focused, and because you had just 1 year, you wanted to make the most of it, and that pushed you harder than procrastinate. That's awesome. Can you share like one specific story where you failed at something while you were building the startup, and how did you overcome that?
I feel that finding a full-time job, I would say, um, definitely a lot of sacrifice, especially at the early stage. For instance, I didn't network a lot with my MBA classmates at that time. I was always either at the CS building trying to talk with PhD students about the idea, trying to, attract other talents to join my team. Definitely didn't do everything perfect, but I was managed to do the right thing um, well, which is everything around building the startup. I think I was very good at being focused or keeping the balance between being focused and being open-minded. And I think I'm the kind of person who has very little ego, which means if you say, negative feedback to me, I'm okay. I might probably ask you more follow-up questions to tell me why. Yeah, so definitely a little ego, but um, I was very, persevere about what I wanted to do. So when people told me about, how they think this idea is impossible, I basically didn't take it too much personally. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I guess a lot of successful entrepreneurs are self-validated, but they're also open-minded. So a lot of positivity, no ego, and having a growth mindset. I think you're the perfect combo there. So before we end the interview and jump into Q&A, I like if there are three pieces of advice for immigrants who are here, they have a business idea. What are those three pieces of advice?
Just do it. It's not as risky as you might imagine, because let's say if you failed, right, after you try it out, the experience you gained, the skills you have gained during this um, experience would definitely stand you out among other peers, which means even if you decide to go back to the job market, trying to find another job, you definitely will outperform other, employees or other candidates. So it's definitely a worthy um, choice for your career, even for your life. Yeah, because as you grow your company, you're actually growing yourself in all aspects, physically, mentally, spiritually, all aspects. Yeah.
That is very inspiring. It was so great to talk to you, JJ.